they would call an expendable asset. I am easily replaced, I assure you, by other young college students who love my job. So we're not going to try to recreate an 18th century battle. Please feel free to take pictures from where you are, but don't try to outflank and outmaneuver me. This musket will make a loud discharge when fired, so feel free to cover your ears. I'll give you a warning before we actually fire. Now the British soldier would have carried the musket, trained to carry it up on his shoulder like this, high enough so that the officers would know when he was ready for the next command after the weapon was loaded. And the soldier would bring the weapon down and take the weapon to the half-cocked position, which I have it right there. Now when fired, this mechanism here called the cock, which holds a small stone called the flint, will come down and strike this piece of metal here called the hammer, which will hopefully cause a spark or more. Those sparks will hopefully ignite the powder placed in what is called the pan. That ignited powder will hopefully burn through the touch hole and ignite the powder inside the barrel. And if all those hopefully happen, you will have a musket fire, but writings of officers of the time suggest that if 75% of the weapons could be fired at once, they considered that an acceptable rate of fire. In other words, if 25% of the weapons did not go off, they considered that normal. So again, that's why they mass those men together in those compact formations to get the most effective use of their weapons as they can. So the soldier would remove a cartridge from his belly box, and he's going to use a very important tool in the opening of this cartridge. Any idea what that tool is?
Teeth.
That's right. To serve in the king's army, you must be as tall as the king's musket, have all your fingers, and have a minimum of 2 opposable teeth. I'm then going to pour a small amount of powder into the pan, close the hammer over top to ensure none of that powder falls out, cast the musket about, pouring the remaining powder and ball down the barrel, removing my ramrod, ramming that down to the bottom, returning my ramrod, and then bringing my musket back up to the shoulder and ready for the next command to fire. At this point, I will about face and fire, giving the commands that they would have received. Note, it is not ready, aim, fire. Note the formality in the commands. It's part of the courage under fire to take your time. Warfare in 18th century is seen as much as combat as it is artwork. Officers have a lot of honor invested in how they fight and the formality of warfare. So again, feel free to cover your ears and I'll give the commands that they would have received. Right about face. Join your right arm to your firelock. Poise your firelock. Join your left arm to your firelock. Cock your firelock. Present your firelock. Give fire. Recover firelock. You can see the amount of black powder discharged just from one weapon. Imagine hundreds going off. Makes more sense with the colored uniforms. And that brings me to the conclusion of my talk. But before ending, I'd like to leave with you some parting thoughts on the significance of this site and our understanding of the Virginia Regiment beyond seeing a big bang and a puff of smoke out here in the hot sun and some funny dressed guy talking to you. In addition to this site being the first battle of the French and Indian War and George Washington's first military experience, we touched on the sacrifices and sufferings of the soldiers that endured the brunt of the fighting. At the end of the battle here, 30 British soldiers lose their lives on the ground you are standing on, as well as 2 French and 1 Native American in the surrounding woodline. There are no graves here that we are aware of, but what we do know is that in 1755, the year after this battle was fought, when General Edward Braddock's army marches just by here on their way to Fort Duquesne, one of the junior officers notes in his journal seeing human bones scattered about on the very grounds that you are standing on. In other words, these men, we do know, were never properly buried and left to decompose far, far away from family and friends. A place to them as foreign and strange and distant as what a place like Afghanistan would be like for you folks today. Many of their families likely never knew about their whereabouts or what took place to them. And so we honor this site as a lasting memorial and tribute to these men. Yes, they were not Americans as we define the word today. However, they were out here sacrificing much in the hopes of it improving and bettering their lot in life, regardless of which side they fought for. Isn't that ultimately what America would become? A place where people would come with all kinds of cultural backgrounds in the hopes of improving and making a better life for themselves. And so we honor this site and these men that fell here as living out and dying for what it would mean to be an American well before the first shots of the Revolution or the signing of the Declaration. That concludes my program. I thank you for your attention and participation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will be around. Otherwise, have a wonderful day here.